Our friends over at SPECULATIVEFaith.com are lending us another article. This one by L. Loggy Lamplighter. I don't know if I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I'm very sorry about that. But anyway, I'm gonna go with Loggy. L. Loggy Lamplighter, published on February 9th, 2018, titled "Out of Darkness, Hope: The Promise of the Superversive." Lamplighter writes, Joseph Swan invented the incandescent light bulb at almost the same moment as Edison. When Stephen LaBerge, is that LaBerge? I don't know, man, suddenly I got to pronounce all these things. When Stephen LaBerge pioneered sleep-to-waking communication at Stanford Labs, he was chagrined to discover that someone else had also done so, also in England, just around the same time. Another idea that had sprung simultaneously into the world in the last few years is the notion that stories are meant for something more than the grim and cynical tales that have been popular of late. This idea of a light springing from the darkness through fiction came to Sarah A. Hoyt as human wave, to those objecting to grimdark as noble bright, and to a few science fiction fantasy authors who were tired of stories that subverted all the fine and decent things of the world as the superversive literary movement. The superversive literary movement was born in a car in late May of 2013. My husband, author John C. Wright, and I were driving home from the Baltimore Science Fiction Convention, talking about the panels we had been on and how we were tired of a lack of heroism in the stories we watched or read. In particular, we were tired of the idea that anything subversive was hip and valuable in and of itself. I had recently read about the founders of the steampunk movement, and the idea of starting a literary movement amused me. I announced to my husband that we should start one, a literary movement devoted to heroism, decency, and a light shining in the darkness. In particular, I wanted it to be about the kind of stories where you are reading along and suddenly you are lifted out of the ordinary into a world more bright, where you gain a glimpse through the supposedly eternal clouds of the stars beyond. We had a theme for our new literary movement. All we needed was a name. After a few false starts, John suggested Superversive. What does superversive mean, you ask? To subvert is to bring about change by undermining something from beneath. To supervert is to bring about change by inspiring from above. At the time, I knew the word as the LiveJournal handle of Mr. Superversive himself, essayist extraordinaire Tom Simon. If you have not read any of Mr. Simon's essays on Tolkien and the nature of storytelling, you are in for a treat. At first, I objected to the superversive literary movement as a name, as I found the word hard to say. With time, however, it has grown on me until now I cannot imagine using a different word. It took me over a year to launch this new literary movement. In September of 2014, the Superversive Literary Movement blog was finally announced to the world in the form of a blog. Our first essay was The Art of Courage by Mr. Simon himself. Almost immediately, something strange happened. People began contacting me, letting me know how much they wanted to be involved, not just in little ways, but in major ones. 16-year-old A.M. Freeman sent me an article for the blog that, to this day, remains one of the best we have ever posted. Other people sent posts as well. But most amazing of all, Jason Rennie, at the time the Australian publisher of Sci-Fi Journal, wrote and asked if I minded if he started a blog. Minded. I was ecstatic. A literary movement had been born. Today, Mr. Rennie's blog, Superversive SF, continues to host the Superversive blog. He has also founded Superversive Press, a small press publisher that is on the lookout for quality fiction with heroic or uplifting themes. People sometimes ask us how superversive stories differ from Noble Bright. To a degree, they don't. To the degree they do, it is something like this. If a Noble Bright story takes place in a world more bright, a superversive story tends to start in the darkness and occasionally glimpse that brighter world through the murk as a light in the distance. It offers the promise that even if things should grow dark, there is always reason to hope. In some areas, there is not room for two luminaries. Joseph Swan is all but forgotten, while Edison is still a household name. In the world of literature, however, there is plenty of room for anyone who wants to join the Renaissance celebrating the bright and heroic in the soul of man. May Noble Bright and superversive stories continue side by side for generations to come. For anyone interested in learning more about the Superversive literary movement, some of the best articles, including some mentioned above, can be found here. And I'll make a point of putting a link to the site that they link to in the article below the video. Anyway, I want to thank our friends at SPECULATIVEFaith.com for lending us another article. That one again titled Out of Darkness, Hope, the Promise of the Superversive. You can find that article and a bunch more like it over at SPECULATIVEFaith.com.
christiangeekcentral.com